Okay, sometimes the numbers and these are very, very complex, and you might be very anxious to see the numbers because the numbers and the mathematics, I believe in the social science who major in sociology or criminology, I believe and I understand that there are very rare number of students who like the math. So my plan is to minimize the calculation in this class. So if you have worried about the mathematics or the calculation, please don't worry too much about that because I will provide all the resources to help you to deal with the population issues without the calculation a lot. Alright, so the size of the population. So do you know the total size of the population of the United States? So we are in the middle of the 2023, and let's guess about the population size of the 2022. So what do you think about that? Do you think the population size of the United States is 100 million or 200 million or something? Yeah. Even if we are very urgent, maybe you already try to search the population size. So the population size of the United States in the latest data is about 336 million. So this is a very, very large number because the United States is the third most populous country, the third largest country in terms of population in the world. So you can see more effects in that, the current population and the trends and the composition of the size, and the size of the population of the United States is 4.25% of the total world population. So still, the United States is very, very big, but it's only about 4.25% over the whole total population. And there are more contents, but we will have more chance to deal with those issues. So how about China and India, which are the biggest countries in the world? So 1,452 million. 1,413 million, right? Much bigger than the United States, more than 4 times bigger than the United States. So the China is about 18%, about the 18% of the total population of the world, and 18% of the total population of the world. So you can imagine that how big those countries are. So these are the first and the second largest country in the world. And there are the more contents, so that is increasing the first populace and the second populace, and the 60% living in urban area and 35% of people living in urban area. We can see that very different types of information in this the data set. So this data set, usually these are conducted and collected by the census data, governed by the Census Bureau, for example, in the United States, or the population department in their country, like China and India. And every country would have some of the departments of the government department deal with and governs the population data collection, but usually these are not very easy one. So based on the textbook and based on the data, this is the census form of the 2010 and the census form of the 2020. I believe your household or the head of the household, probably your parents or other relatives, they already have the experience of the filling out on these kind of the forms, but you may not. I'm not sure. You may or you may not have experience in this kind of form. But every 5 years, so 2010 and the latest one was 2020, and always, so every 5 years, the population, the Census Bureau, the United States Census Bureau, they collect the population data. To have all the individuals in that data as the purpose of the data collection. The once upon a time, the oldest record of the population or census data collection is Palermo stone fragments on the information of the very royal family and other information. But you can see that based on the characteristics and like they didn't have the very specific alphabet, and they have the picture, the fonts. So there was very big limitation of the volume of the information they can get. However, in these days, because we can collect data as a data format, there are very affluent and rich information and rich elements in the census data. But there are the basic four contents of the census data as individual, which means every individual or every people, they should be included. Every person should be included in the census data collection, because the purpose of the census data collection is collecting all the data of the individual, every citizen, or every people living in the United States. Based on, so there will be some of the exceptions, but the rule is individual, collecting all the data of all the persons living in the United States. And also the universal, everybody in the specific territory region must be counted and described. So the very basic the unit is individual and the person, and the universality is everyone should be included in the data. And simultaneous means that the data should specify information at a particular census moment, which means the data should be collected within 1 day or 1 week of period of time. Because, for example, now you may live with your family, or now you are living in your home, but maybe in the next after the summer, you may move to the Jonesboro to take the lectures and the courses. So if the data collection is conducted over 3 months or 4 months, you might be counted once more, or you may not be counted because of the time period time. So the simultaneousness is within the specific census moment, all the data should be collected to avoid any of the errors in the data collection. And the period means it should be carried in the regular intervals. I said that every 5 years, for example, so that we can keep track of the trends of the population changes very, very effectively. So these four, the individual, universal, the simultaneous, and the periodic, will be the basic four features of the census data or census data collection. So if we miss some of the data, like not individual, not universal, not simultaneous, and not periodic, these will be very problematic. Because not individual, if we collect the data as a family unit, as the basic one, we may miss a very large amount of information of each people in that household or the family members. Not universal, which means if we just specify the information within only Arkansas, then we may omit on the large information again, because all the states and all the counties and all the municipalities should be included in that, because if we miss some of the areas, we miss that information. Not simultaneous, as I just mentioned before, we may have some errors because of the duplications of the records or the missing records and errors in the contents. I will cover a little later. And not periodic, which means that if these are not very periodic, sometime, for example, the data collection is conducted within 5 years, and next time after 10 years later, next time 15 years later, then the quality of the data and the usefulness of the data will be decreased a lot. So that's why the individual, the universal, simultaneousness, and the periodic will be very important criteria of data collection. So not all countries do, such as developing and the developed countries. So the data collection of the census data, the Census Bureau in the United States, they conduct the data collection every 5 years. But not all countries can do that because of the budget and the difficulty of the data collection. So let's just suppose that some country would have very large number of islands, and so that they're very, very far each other, and if they don't have the money, and if they are in the worst situation, and their territory is consists of a very large amount of the mountain area, then the amount of the budget will be skyrocket, or increase like a skyrocket. So that's why in some of the developed countries and the underdeveloped or developing countries, they may not be able to collect the very qualified data because of these limitations. So setting up the geographic boundary questionnaire and simultaneously organize and report the data for the sponsoring the city's journey, and these will be very big purposes of the data collection. So Once again, the census topics as the geographical information. There are the two types of the geographic information. What we say, de facto residence, originated from the French. De facto residence means the standard of the person's residence at the census moment. For example, if we collect the data on the July 1st as the middle of the year, maybe you may live in your home or you may move or travel around. For example, your home is in Jonesboro in Arkansas, but you wanted to travel to the New York City at a point of time, because of the weekends, and there are the holiday weekends and the Independence Day later. And then your data was collected in the New York, and you were indicated as the resident of the New York. So in that point of the view, the de facto residence is not very, very useful. Even though this is very useful, not super 100% useful, because there's not very correct residential information. So as the stars are shining here, usually I include this kind of the shining star if I introduce a very important concept. But de jure residence means the person's usual place of the residence. For example, if you're living in Jonesboro with your family as your permanent home, your data or your residential data will be collected at the Jonesboro. So in most countries, we will select the de jure residence information, because, as I said, that will be more important and more useful information. And again, the household information, not only individual, your household information, such as who is the house head and the breadwinner, and education of the individuals in the household. These will be included, and not only age, tax, human resources, as you said, as I briefly introduced in the previous lecture, as the population composition, and the fertility and mortality. These will be calculated at the vital statistics in the Census Bureau and the National Center for the Health Statistics. On that, some more information in the page 38 of the textbook, but you can see that there are very important information here. And there are many types of errors. We cannot create the 100% correct data set. So what kind of the errors or the mistakes are possible? So the knowing about the errors and preventing or avoiding, or even adjusting these errors will be also very important topic in the population studies. All right, so I will briefly discuss about these issues in the next video.